everybody. This is me, Kermit the Grog, here with my good friend Forward Progress. We're just sort of wheeling and dealing, and I had the idea because I wanted to do more of this, and I know he wouldn't be against it because he gets to tell his story, that I'm going to interview Forward Progress. Now, as I said moments before this recording started, I'm not really prepared with anything, but also neither is he. So this is going to be interesting. So we're just kind of follow threads as they happen, and hopefully this is listenable and doesn't just need to be trash for getting too personal, or maybe not. Who knows? I don't know. So Forward, I guess let's start. So Keeping Friendship Magic just had its 6-year anniversary, right?
Yes it did.
What would you say? I mean, you've told the story of what started. Have you told that on camera yet?
Some elements, yes.
So let's get the start of it there, and then we'll start
Okay.
splintering off from that. Let's build our trunk of this tree.
So, the whole inspiration first came, I went to BronyCon 2014. That was my first ever fandom convention, anything. And I was, like, blown away by so much that weekend. And I met so many amazing people. And, two of them, and this one I know I've talked about in panels before, is, Michael Morones and his family. And, I believe his name was, Grayson, I want to say. He was, the young boy, who was bullied for bringing his Rainbow Dash backpack to school back in the day. Yep. Yeah. So I got to meet both of those families, and it really stuck with me about like how these people kind of powered through all this stuff, but that there were so many people who were just kind of getting the short end of the stick. And I was like, there needs to be a voice for this. And then couple that with a lot of other stuff that was going on at the time. Obviously, I was back in college finally, and I discovered sociology was like my thing, and it's what I wanted to do with my life, was social science.
You found your cutie mark.
I did. Exactly. That's exactly what it was. And so I had all this inspiration. I wanted to do something. Now, originally, one of the things, because I'm like, what do I do? And I was thinking, what haven't I seen? Didn't I see at BronyCon? And like I had different ideas that came to me. One was doing some kind of LGBT thing, because I noticed there really wasn't any that year there. And then, but when I thought about it, I'm like, there wasn't an LGBT thing because there doesn't need to be an LGBT thing in this community. Like, the whole point is acceptance of you for no matter who you are, and the fact that like a lot of the Brony conventions had gender-neutral bathrooms long before, like, even my college or this or that other place had gender-neutral bathrooms, was always a big thing. So it's like it wasn't really needed. Like,
yeah.
So I'm like, I'm not going to make something that people don't need. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, okay. So I got online, which had kind of, like, two sides of this. One was I found our local Brony group, which is how I met you.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like the, really set me up to meet so many amazing people and really build a lot of friendship bonds and everything. But then the other side was going into just like some general like Facebook groups that are like, like worldwide, open to whoever. And there'd be some really great conversation and great people in there. But then there would be other people who would just not be so great or would be saying things. And I had a couple of times in there where there would be people like who would say something and you could tell they weren't trying to be offensive, but they were offending people, if that makes sense.
I got it.
Really good example of this. And I don't remember the people. I mean, it's been years. But somebody had said something in a thread of like trying to say like, oh, I'm, such and such is so cool. Like, no homo. And it was like the, yeah, exactly, where that thing of like...
I haven't heard that in a while, and I'm very happy I haven't heard that in a while.
So, obviously, it was one of those things where it was a weird moment where, as a gay man myself, I'm like, dude.
Yeah, come on.
But
out of fashion by this point.
But I knew he wasn't trying to be. And I was like, there's got to be a way to get this message out to people that are not terrible people, but are like, they just need that push in the right direction.
They need a little information because, a rock at rest stays at rest. Newton's one of his laws.
So I actually,
of humanity.
I think I either commented or I DM'd said person, and I said something about like, I know this isn't what you were trying to do, but this is a thing that's there, and like, you know, this is something to keep in mind for the future. And I don't remember exactly how I put it, but it was very like not angry, not accusatory, not like, it was very much like all about informing.
That's very, from who and what I know you as, that is very in character for you even then. You are, and we were even talking about this earlier today, like, you are the diplomat. You are somebody who wants to go, there's conflict, I can find some way through this that we can, you know, people can be educated and informed, and the problem can be fixed.
Yeah, and
or at least helped.
I mean, I guess that's part of the thing for me, because it's like, when I went to college and really started diving into social science, like, all these like light bulbs went off over my head of like, oh my god, I understand why people do this thing now, or why I've been beating myself up over X thing. Like, all of these puzzle pieces were getting put together, and it's kind of that thing of like, maybe there's something that needs to go out there where other people can get just that little inspiration to maybe put a couple of puzzle pieces together. So that's kind of where my mind was like, and I remember talking to the guy, and he was like appreciative, and he understood, and he was like, yeah, you know, like, I really didn't think about it, like, I get what you're saying, you know. And I was like, that was really cool.
I mean, like, what you did is the right approach. I feel like, you know, there's going to be sidebars and tangents in this. That's kind of the point of the rolling conversation, but I'll make sure I bring it back then, is that if somebody's doing something that's not great behavior, that's, you know, offending or whatevering other people, I hate that some of these words now have, like, extra specific weights to them, so it's, like, hard to use them, and I want to find other words that don't have that communicate those base definitions, but don't have the extra connotations with them. But, like, yelling at someone or shaming them doesn't usually work for that person. It might kind of help inform to other people, but it's like, you have to go, hey, like, it's that small, like, personal, like, a singular human was harmed in this, and that singular human is talking to you right now about how they're feeling, and they're not shouting, they're not calling you a monster, they're just hey, maybe don't do that, XYZ.
Yeah. There's a good friend of ours who gosh, so many names that goes by, but Riftwing Designs, Brass Knuckles,
Come check out her yoga last Saturday of the month. Yes. I believe it's Star Wars theme. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, Mandalorian theme, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, excitement.
Yeah, I think I saw an image of the cosplay she's going to be doing too, and it's
really good.
It's tight. Okay, so one of the early conventions we went to, actually the very first convention I ever presented Keeping Friendship Magic at, she was also presenting there as Brass Knuckles and doing the assertive seminar.
Yep, I remember which one you're talking about now.
It was so much of that click moment of like, someone else who gets this, because she always talked about ways of being assertive and making statements about what someone's doing to you without being like vengeful or attacking. You know, you could stand up for yourself without making the situation worse.
Without striking back.
Exactly, yeah.
But still letting it know, like, hey, this hurt.
Yeah.
Here is why. Let's try to seek some resolution on this.
Because that's one of the things about, I think, internet trolls and trolling on the internet and all that stuff, and that's the way it works, is like, somebody puts out something out there that's intentionally inflammatory, and sometimes you can't tell. Sometimes it's not.
That's tough. The big problem of the internet is you can't tell when somebody's being genuine or not, and it's hard to communicate your own emotions or genuineness to other people, especially strangers.
So it's somebody puts out something there that's inflammatory, and if they're trolling, it is intentional, but you don't always know. And then the way it really works is that's there as bait. That's why there's the meme.
It's bait.
The it's bait
with
meme
the fish
from well, there's that, and then there's the
one.
Mad Max one that's been there, where from Fury Road, where Max points up and goes, "That's bait."
Yeah, it's same lineage.
Same meme.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, but and I'm glad to see that that's happening, because it means that people are kind of waking up to the way this works.
The luring of the fishing of the trolls.
But they're waiting for somebody to get inflammatory in response, to be so quote unquote self-righteous or whatever they want to use. And it's the reason why I think SJWs, you know, social justice warrior terminology and this back and forth, I think has really just been this battle of like, somebody puts out these inflammatory things and then people get really upset, and then they respond, but totally in the I'm so upset in my response that it comes out as this really like spiteful kind of like,
yeah,
and it's not that they're wrong in what they're saying, but it's not the way to say it, because that's exactly what a troll wants.
Yeah,
and they want to feed off that,
playing right into the trap.
Yep. And then it creates the back and forth, and then it becomes this domino effect to create chaos.
Yeah, the forever war.
Like, so when you can make like smart assertiveness statements of like, I'm a person, here's why this bothered me. If you're going to continue this, I don't want to have a relationship with, like, very to the point, being assertive, standing up for yourself, but not being a jerk. I mean, maybe there's better terminology to use, but I think
I know what you're getting at. Yeah. The being having to scream, having to yell, and raise your voice and all that, and use harsh language.
Well, and sometimes you need that, but you don't have to
do it to them.
Like, the thing about the internet is, like, you don't have to send that out.
No.
You could even open up like a new window and type out your feelings,
yeah,
or go scream it into the void.
Yep.
And then come back to it a moment later and be like, all right.
Because your body feels like it wants to get it out of you, so just get it out of you, just not towards anybody.
Yeah.
Or not towards the parties that or the intended recipient.
You need to recognize.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, you need to recognize your emotions, because if you don't recognize your emotions, like, you can't be all emotions and no logic, or no logic and all it. You know emotions. What I mean? Or,
yeah. You can't be all. You're not an automaton.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
As much as you might try to, as I have done in the past, you can't forego your emotions. You are a human being at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And you have to understand that and work with that. That's not a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination.
But it's when we have that instant reaction. It's kind of, like, because we're programmed for that kind of whole fight, flight, or freeze type of thing.
Did we just backdoor our way into the social media episode you've been wanting to do? Back on track.
Anyway.
So you found
Stay tuned for the next episode.
Yeah. Foreshadowing.
But yeah, like, so anyway, long story short of all this, to bring it around, is that's a lot of the stuff that made me go, I want to make this a project. And then, or I want to do something with this. So I started toying around the idea of trying to do a panel, and the panel was going to be called Keeping Friendship Magic. And it was just a panel at first. Of like,
it wasn't like a bigger brand. It was literally just, this is the thing I want to make.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was like in a concept. I had this concept. I was going to call it Keeping Friendship Magic, and and I started talking to friends in our group and some other associates and being like, what do you think about this? And people were vibing on the idea and would give me their feedback. And I was like, yeah, we're a great community, but we can always do better. And what can we learn? Because that's the other thing too. It's like, the Brony community is based off of a show and the values of the show and all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, if we are all saying that, then like we should be taking these to heart and bringing the show into the real world.
Yeah.
As much as we can anyway. Obviously, not everything's going to be one-to-one.
Within reasonableness.
Yeah, exactly. So, putting all this together, I then went. I graduated with my associates at the end of 2014. 2015, spring of 2015 is spring semester, I should say, so January. I started my bachelor studies at Penn State, and one of my very first classes was a class called Social Change, and what we had to do, everybody had to pick a cause or like something they wanted to see change in the world, and like the whole semester would be built around doing things to promote this change. And I'm like, I had this idea for this thing I already made, like this concept, and I went up to the professor and was like, can we run with this? And she said, yeah, like it sounds like something you could run with. And then I made the Keeping Friendship Magic Twitter, and I made a blog.
And here we are 6 years later.
Yeah, and 6 years later, we're here talking about all of it. So it's funny, because I literally just posted the first vlog the other day, and that really kind of took me back.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to make sure, because I know we talked about, you told me a version of the story talking about that, but I wasn't sure if that ever got on camera or on audio recording or not.
I mean,
in one cohesive piece. one cohesive narrative.
It's tough because like there's even more to it technically of people that inspired it and this and that, and I feel like all of these tales will get told.
Yeah, but I feel like there's a certain usefulness, especially for this situation, of telling it as one cohesive linear line.
Yeah. It
helps put
there's
pieces
been
together.
So much that's inspired and changed and grown it, because like you would have asked me back in 2015 if I thought we would have had at least semi-successful podcast. I would be like, you're me on a podcast? And then now I can't, like, it was the best thing I think we ever started. So
yeah, I would say, obviously it's hard to say as we continue to be in quarantine at this time, and it's almost been a year where there hasn't been any like in-person conventions, which there's been online ones, which you have done a lot of, admittedly.
Yeah. What can I say?
But I feel like it's not quite the same thing.
Yeah.
So I feel like the podcast has been, at least from my point of view, the kind of big thing for keeping friendship magic.
That and the online cons. Definitely this past year has been crazy, but it's been... I feel like we took advantage of... we took a crappy situation and took advantage of what we could do with it.
Yep. I think you took good advantage of the situation presented to you.
Yeah.
Now, something I'm going to bring up, and I think we've talked about this actually a little bit on a prior podcast, which one I cannot remember, but I remember hearing us talking about it, is your panels a lot with Keeping Friendship Magic kind of goes an extra step, or let me backtrack a second. So we've been to a lot of cons where we've seen panels where it is a panelist talking about a problem within a community or a fandom, and say, I think this, it's like saying this is bad. It diagnoses the problem and then doesn't do anything besides going, this is bad. And I feel that your panels don't fall into that trap. Is that an intentional effort? Was that something that you put in, that you kind of went and said, hey, I've been to other ones, this doesn't work? And how do you think you do that? You kind of achieve that? Because that has definitely been, like, that's usually why I'm not in any, it's like, hey, I'm glad this is on the schedule, but like the people who need to hear this aren't going to be the people who are here, or you're just saying this is bad, but you're not giving any sort of like any other information around this to make it useful besides just going, yes, I know this was bad. You don't need to tell me bullying is bad. I know that. I think that's pretty simple. And if there's people bullying, they're obviously not at this panel. So you need more understanding. That's the idea. So
it's definitely intentional. I've seen panels, even panels by people that I know that and this is not dissing anybody, because anybody who's willing to put themselves out there in front of a crowd and give a presentation like deserves all the credit for that, because that's something not everybody can do.
True. And if I'm going to be incredibly selfish and mean about it for a moment, is sometimes you have to see somebody be really bad at something to go, hey, I can do that. Because I know that's what inspired me to get into panels.
That's partially what inspired the Theory of Zelda panel.
Yeah. And hopefully we're never that for anybody else.
I hope not.
Be selfish, say, hey, somebody else was garbage, but hopefully we'll never be the garbage to somebody else.
I mean, granted, though, like, I know that, maybe something I do, like, some of my panels have been stronger than others.
Oh, yeah, a billion %, but we never had one where it was like, we were never Bumble Lords.
I don't think so.
I guess, and to backtrack for a second, because I'm admittedly being a little flippant here for comedic sake, which is not nice, but lost my train of thought trying to be nice. Oh my gosh, I just regained it. You do make a good point. Is it does take a lot to get in front of people and talk, and certain people are better than others, and it's also a skill you get better at.
So, but it's like it is kind of like a pet peeve of mine, because I've gone to so many panels that either end up being, because it's like there's a problem and we're going to talk about the fact that there's a problem, but then like I'm waiting for, okay, what do we do about the problem, and it never shows itself. Or we've also been to panels where it's like here's it essentially turns into like a listicle live delivered to you of like, here's things that are like, I like this genre. Here's a bunch of cool stuff you need to check out in this genre. And I'm like, I could have read that online too. So it's a conscious effort on my part when I make something to make it obviously entertaining.
Yes. I feel like that's really important. I feel like some people miss that beat, and they're just, like you kind of said, the listicle. It feels like it's just a presentation of information where it needs that extra little performance flair.
And I have an example in my head, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it's like, I've seen ones where talking about issues within cosplay culture, things about, like, LGBT representation and such, where they're talking about the fact of, like, yes, this is what's happening, but then it stops there, and it doesn't get into, okay, what do we do about it, or what's the next step? So I've always said, especially in the Keeping Friendship Magic ones, is I'm like, most Keeping Friendship Magic panels, which is the core of what the project, at least it has been, is it's usually divided up into multiple sections, usually anywhere between 3 and 5 main sections, all surrounding one main topic or theme. So I'll use my classic example of the Odd Pony Out panel, which I've done. God, I've done that at like 7 or 8 different conventions now.
Wow, impressive.
I want to do it again. Actually, I know I've done it so many times, but it's been like probably 2 years since I've done it. I think it's time to bring it back. It doesn't work on online con format though, and you've seen it.
Yeah.
So you might not remember, but there is an audience participation portion of it, and that's why it doesn't work.
I remember that. I couldn't remember if I had seen it myself or not. But we've definitely had that conversation about this panel. That
I want to do it.
Talk to people easily, and that just doesn't work in an online convention.
So
capture that same feeling.
So, but there's a whole section on. So the idea behind that, the Odd Pony Out, is being like, okay, a lot of times we feel like we're the odd man out, the odd one out, like somebody who just doesn't fit in X situation, and then it's like, okay, within that, let's talk about how and why we make the friends that we do. So we're kind of thinking about, when we're the odd one out, why are we? Why aren't we making friends? And then I talk in that one about the importance of appreciating differences, because we talk about a lot of things in the first segment about similarities, but then we got to talk about differences. We talk about how stigma impacts making friends, and then we talk about kind of depression and stuff, and the barriers to friendship within that. So all of this gets in one little package, and the thing about it is, like, at the end of the day, it's okay, yes, we've all felt that kind of, I shouldn't say all, but most of us at some point has felt that kind of like odd man out, and it's like here's a list of, like, here's stuff that I've seen that I think is helpful to navigate life within there, and I can use examples of this show, and so we use clips, we talk about the characters and things, and I think that's what brings it home too, is it's like you're not just talking and talking at that point, you're talking, but you're also showing examples, and it's things people can connect with, because people can connect with pop culture. They've watched the shows, they understand more when you see that kind of like that video representation of the topic of, like, okay, yeah, like, I understand why Rarity and Applejack interacted like this, or I understand, like, why myself and my friend might have interacted like this, because now I can see I've been kind of told a little information, and I can see
here it is
what Rarity and Applejack did.
Here it is presented really clearly without a lot of extra variables going into it. It's just, here's a very clear example of the thing you're talking about.
And granted, obviously I talk a lot about Pony, but I mean, Keeping Friendship Magic has grown beyond just Pony at this point, because I've done Keeping Friendship Magic, Steven Universe ones. I had a Kingdom Hearts one planned that kind of got canceled because of 2020. But I did Keeping Fandoms Magic years ago. That was a one-time one I did where I used examples from, oh my gosh, what is the anime?
Literally
Full Metal Alchemist.
Okay.
Full Metal Alchemist. I used Full Metal Alchemist. I used South Park. I believe Steven Universe was in that one. I used a whole bunch of different ones to kind of make a little point about, like, multiple things within it, but really just about, like, friendship, values, and lessons can be learned from all over different fandoms. So just because we're all in different fandoms doesn't mean we can't somehow get along. Was the whole point of it. So, anyway, long story short, that's kind of the crux.
Cool. This is actually fitting because we were talking about all this earlier, but it kind of fits in here. Is that you described as sort of within those presentations making them entertaining, and obviously you've done other panels and still do kind of the online cons that aren't through the Keeping Friendship Magic sort of banner. Why do you think, or kind of what inspires you of like being a performer? Like what about that, or like an entertainer? Okay. What about that appeals to you? Where do you think that comes from for you?
I think I've always kind of had it to an extent. I think I just kind of buried it for a long time because of my, my upbringing and my depression and anxiety growing up and stuff kind of left me to bury a lot of that. But there's something about making someone else smile. And I think that's the big thing of like, the best part of doing conventions and Keeping Friendship Magic and everything is when somebody comes up to me afterwards and is like, thank you, or I really I learned something today, or I needed to hear this, or things. I mean, I've had people come up and give me hugs. I had somebody ask me for my autograph one time, which was like, sure.
Yeah, who am I?
I'm just me.
But that you is somebody,
I guess,
to them.
Yeah, like it's there is some kind of satisfaction of it within there. There's a quote from a wildly entertaining Broadway musical called Avenue Q. Which NSFW warning for everybody, but it's there's a song towards the end of it that goes, when you help others, you can't help helping yourself. Like, you're bound, like, there's something, humans are naturally social creatures.
Yes.
And we do get joy out of helping people. Like, there's debates in social science communities about, does true altruism really exist? And my response to it is always, who cares? if like, to be blunt, it's if you're only helping others because it makes you feel good, is that really a bad thing?
Are these people still not being helped?
Yeah, like, you're helping people.
Yeah. You're
doing good in the world, and good will come back onto you. I genuinely believe that. So, it's not always, again, it's not always one-to-one and all that stuff, but there's a thing of, like, seeing somebody else smile makes me smile inside. So I think that's a big driving force behind what I do. And it's that thing of, like, like I said, after a panel, when people come up and they're like, and they say something to me, like, I'm on cloud 9 with that. It's the same thing of, like, if I ever get somebody subscribed to the Patreon, it's like, they like me. They really like me.
Part with their hard-earned cash.
Yeah, I don't care if it's just $1 a month. Yeah. That's $1 a month.
Somebody made the effort to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's anytime, you should see it, because, like, the last couple times, actually, I think you were there the last time I got a new patron. And I was, like, on cloud 9 that night. I was like, oh my gosh, somebody gave me money!
Time, I remember the last time we were out walking, and you were like, you were beaming the rest of that walk. It got you up the hill then.
Because it was like, well, it's just like, okay, yes, it's money, which is great. Don't get me wrong. Like, I need it to survive.
Yeah.
But really...
keep this running, yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is to keep it running, because the whole thing with the Patreon is every dollar that comes from the Patreon gets funneled right back into paying to host the podcast. And, like, eventually it'll go to hosting our other podcast and hosting, I haven't really dropped this, but hosting the website.
Oh, dang.
So,
that's not the website.
Yeah, that's a thing. I just need the money. So, once I have the money to get the hosting, then the website will be a thing, and then I'll actually...
That's the big thing in Patreon. You set your goals, and it's, hey, if we get here, we can do this thing, this exciting thing.
I've been wanting to do it for a while, and I haven't really said anything, because I didn't want to set people up and then never have it. But like I always have ideas of things I wanted to do. And it's funny, when I first made a Patreon, I thought maybe like my goals would be eventually people will give me enough money that I could afford to go to a West Coast convention or things like that. And now it's turned into, how can I take this and grow the actual media of the project that I do at home? And part of that, I think the pandemic had a lot to do with.
Yeah.
But
sort of an internal strengthening instead of kind of going out because we couldn't go out.
Well, that was the thing, is like
There's
for years it was just me trying to make my name, or not even my name, because I never cared if people knew who I was. Like,
put a pin in that one for later, because that's actually something I want to get back to.
I mean, to an extent.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Full over.
It's always been more important to me that people remember the message of the project than it is that they remember me. Or like, I don't care about the concept of horse fame or all that stuff. I'm like, okay, like, you know who I am? Cool. You like me? Cool. Are you listening to what I'm saying? Are you getting the message of the project? Am I having an impact? That's what I really want to know. To the point, like, originally, I had 2 separate YouTube channels, and I was going to make one just things branded specifically keeping Friendship Magic, and the other one was going to be stuff I branded differently. And then eventually everything just made sense to merge into one. But it was a thing, because it was kind of a struggle at first, because, like, as much as I know that I can, you know, talk with people and be, I guess, charismatic or whatever you want to say.
I would say charismatic. I'll put you over.
Thank you. But I don't, when it comes to things like self-promotion stuff, in the terms of like, hey, everyone, come give me money to do that, like that's not, I'm not big on that.
See, we got to get better at that. Like, I've had years of listening to people pimp their projects on their podcast, that it's like that spiel, like that is just second, that's like breathing to me at this point, even if I haven't necessarily done it. But just, I don't think it's selfish to go like, hey, at the end of an episode, to go, hey, check me out, you know, here are my social links, and check me out on Patreon. Even just just that, you know, a bunch of other people are doing. And I know that doesn't always mean you should do it too, you know, bridge jumping and whatnot. But I think if you do that in a respectful way, I don't think that's a negative thing to do. Because that was like, we've had this, I feel like so many of the times I go, we've had a conversation about this before. We're just doing it on the podcast.
It's almost like we're friends.
I know, crazy, right? Who knew? But it's interesting to me, because you've said before that you're bad at self-promotion, but I've always, and you've agreed with me, of like, you are a schmoozer. We say smoozer, because I can't say schmooze anymore, because we say smooze, because smooth stuff. Like, when you are in a social situation, you will start talking to people and making connections, like, instantly. Like, that is your natural estate. As part of being the diplomat, like, that is just what you made those connections.
You're not wrong.
And it was interesting to me, and I think that's the other, you know, things that kind of how you operate and that live in your head, that doesn't extend out to self-promotion. I think you create connections, but you're not doing that to necessarily build yourself up. You're building yourself, like, out, I guess.
Yeah, like, it's because, like, there's things that I've done now that, like, you know, again, years ago, if you would have asked me that I'd be doing this, that it, like, you know, I'd have said you're crazy. But now it's just commonplace, you know. Like, I've done several editions of, like, the My Little Tonight Show, for example, and gotten, like, very I don't know, like,
responses. Yeah,
like, people like it, and I can get the voice actors to come on.
Yeah, this actually goes into the thing I wanted to talk about, which is half interview question, half just sort of general pondering question. Is that, like, that's not the way I want to put it, but I'm going to say it anyways. Like, you're someone. Your name has recognition to it now, and it's hard to. It's hard to think about that when it's you, or it's like somebody within our little, like, circle, because it's like you're still forward progress. Sure, we'll say that for now. You're still insert name here that we've probably said before, so it's not really a big secret. But
it's not hidden. But
you're you're my friend that I've known for years. But it's like interesting to think and to interview myself for a moment. And this thing is like, there are people that I remember meeting at the con we would go to a lot in Lancaster near us, Zenkai Con, of meeting plus two comedy. And when we first meet them, because it's like my first time going to a con, like, I think these dudes are gods. They're there, they're hilarious. The one guy says he's on TV, and I think they're this really big deal. And there's just something about seeing them every year and listening to them on a podcast that makes that dude in my brain go like, oh my gosh, this big celebrity, this is crazy. But like, when I really think about it, like, he's just a dude, like any of us. Like, freaking, he lives in a normal house, he has a day job, like, he's not, like, it's like, anything that he's done, we've done. We've had successful panels, people remember us, we have a podcast, we've got various other projects, you know, I don't know how many people are following him, I don't know how many people are following you, like, it's weird how our brains can go like, oh man, they have XYZ, and it just sort of gives people like extra clout. Like, have you had that when you like you see somebody at a con and your brain just goes like, oh my gosh, they're so successful, and then you just, it's like at one day you could get that same spot, but it won't feel like that. So it's just like, oh, okay.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna double back to what we talked about earlier, was meeting Riftwing.
Yeah,
that was the first convention that let me present. I had submitted to another one or two conventions before then, but didn't get in. This one let me do 3 panels, I think. One was with you.
I always forget about that one.
Yeah. It's out there in the stratosphere somewhere.
Wow, neat.
Because there was video.
I'd be curious to cringe at that at a future date.
It is funny. It was it was like the first panel we did. We had like 2 or 3 people show up because we were right against like the big like panel with like all the special guests that was going on at the same time. And nobody knew who we were or anything. And we didn't really expect much of anything.
They had no reason to. It was more of just, there was a thing we wanted to do.
You know what? We still did it.
Why we
so,
recorded it.
Well, yeah, we still did it. And
it was a rep. We did practice.
Yeah. So, we met her, and granted, I knew her. Granted, this was more referring to as Brass Knuckles.
Yeah.
And I knew her from BronyCon, because I remember her presenting at BronyCon the 2 years prior, and I knew the name, and I knew she was a special guest down there. And I remember we went to her panel, her assertiveness seminar there, and you had your smooth cape, and she saw that and was instantly like, smooth.
Yeah, and then we're still friends to this day.
We're still friends to this day, but
the magic of the smooth cape, baby.
So there was that, but then she came to my panel and had like wonderful,
like a genuine connection and response to it, not just a sort of show I got to show up.
And that was that thing of like, I impressed somebody important.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, it was like that validation.
Yes.
It was huge validation. And it's funny.
It's this person sort of further along the track, because she had a name, and she had a whole like thing that connected to it, and a persona and a costume, and it seemed so,
oh yeah,
not produced, but it felt so like big.
Yeah.
Not to call it small by any stretch of the imagination, especially if Rift is listening to this or watching this. But like,
we love you.
We freaking love you to pieces.
Oh my gosh.
But it's just like, it feels like this like person, your brain is kind of auto-computing. Maybe this is me. This is again, this is me processing some things in my own head. But it's like this freaking person who's been doing this ages, who's a well-entrenched name and all this stuff, and it makes that like this god has come down and gone like, the thing you're doing is cool.
Yeah.
Even though like technically they're still just another person, and they're not the thing your brain's making them to up. But it is still like amazing to get that.
Well, and
this journeyman human has stepped down and said, "Hey, newbie, you got the stuff."
That's the big thing, and I think that's the thing that I've realized over the years more than anything else is I don't really get starstruck anymore. Like, I still get that moment of like, wow, it's this person, but not in the like you know, like I shut down because they're who they are.
But do you ever get like a heightened nervousness that isn't probably necessary?
It becomes,
or like that, or your brain places this person in a place of a different importance than you would like a regular, like a friend.
Yes, But at the same token, like, I feel as I do more, there's less of that. And it's not because it's not because I feel like I'm becoming a bigger name. It's because
the mystique is going away, right?
well, there's the mystique going away, and I really think at the end of the day, the realization is just these are people.
Yeah,
people
that's
people.
where the mystique goes away, and it's just like, oh, it's a human. Of course.
They just want to be treated like people. So I want to talk to them the same way I talk to somebody at the grocery store. Like, it's like the thing I love when we've done.
You talk to people at the grocery store?
Well, like at the not now.
I wanted some levity.
Not now, but like if I'm shopping and it's not pandemic time.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm up at the register, I'll actually kind of talk up to the cashier or something. And part of that is I worked in retail so long that it's people, like, trust me, when you work in retail, you remember those people who were cool, that were that just wanted to ask how you were. Like, I do that all the time. If I have to call into if I had to call Comcast, or if I had to call or if I have to go somewhere, I do this in the drive-through line all the time. The drive-through window at a fast food place is they'll be like, hi, welcome to such and such, how are you? And they expect you to just go right into your order, and I'll go like, oh, I'm good, how are you doing tonight? And I can't tell you how many times it throws people off, but then you can tell that they're happy that somebody finally asked how they were doing.
And you can kind of sometimes see that when you get around to the window then.
Yeah, it's like
I treated you like a human being, like everybody should be.
Exactly, but that makes all the difference in the world. It's those little things, and just saying that. And that was the thing, is when we decided to try to make some of this stuff happen and to start working with people, it's like Katrina Salisbury, who is a beautiful human being, and I love her to death. She's wonderful and such a sweetheart. But the first time I went to talk to her, I was a little nervous, but it was I was nervous, but I was like, okay, this is who I am. I just wanted to introduce myself. We're doing this thing, and I want to know what you think, and and just yada yada. And it was very just conversation without it being like, oh my gosh, you're Yona.
Yeah.
Yes, I love the fact that she was Yona, and that and now I can call her a friend. But that wasn't what this was about. This was just about talking to another human. And that's the cool thing of I try to just look at it all like that. So if when I'm talking to anybody, it's at the end of the day, people want to work with and be around other people who will just treat them with respect and treat them as a genuine human being.
Okay, cool. To switch gears a little bit with my next question, where do you find, or how do you motivate yourself to work on your various projects?
It varies. It definitely varies. I've had way too many procrastination moments in my life, I'm not gonna lie.
Feel that.
In high school, for a short period of time, people actually nicknamed me the procrastinator.
Wow, really?
Well, I'll tell you. Okay, we're gonna get into this. This is a funny story. So there was twice in high school where there was a girl that everybody was like, oh my god, you guys should be together, and we're trying to kind of push us together, and and then inevitably I wouldn't make a move, and then everybody would be like, oh, you should have made your move because now she's on to another guy, and so everybody just always was like, oh, he's just procrastinating.
Not interested. Not my team. Well, obviously now things are different, but special case.
Yeah. So, but it was funny at the time too.
This is where the comedy comes from. This is why I'm cackling.
Well, this was even before I had come out, fully or anything like that. I was still figuring out my sexuality at the time. Okay. We're talking 15, 16 here. So
I'm cackling at hindsight.
But it is funny to look back in hindsight because it all makes sense now.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I've had that. It'll definitely be an up and down. Lately, I think the fact that this past year especially is the fact that I've gotten so much positive response for the project. Knowing that is there kind of fuels me with a desire to keep it going at this point of okay, I need to do this because it's not that people are counting on me necessarily, but it's like if like I feel like there's an audience, so I can use that as like the hype machine in my head of like I need to get this out for people. Now that being said, that's that's just kind of I feel like a small part of it. A lot of times it's really driven by mood and what's happening around me.
Do you have any like, specific strategies you use to get yourself to get things done?
Part of it becomes kind of itemizing what's going on, especially for a convention where I'm doing numerous panels and I have to put them together. Of things where like, because some are more difficult to put together than others.
Yeah.
Like Mad Libs is hella fun and relatively simple to put together. It's a little time consuming, but essentially like I can come out into the living room with my laptop and work on making scripts Mad Lib versions while hanging out with Rose while she watches TV. So it's a lot easier for me to compartmentalize. Okay, I can get that in kind of wherever.
It's more like a menial task.
Yeah.
It's just a thing that needs doing. It's not like when you have to sit down to a panel and you have to like have inspiration thoughts.
Yeah, well that's the thing is like keeping Friendship Magic panels, those obviously take the longest amount of time. For multiple reasons. Because I always want to try and get some science in there. So a lot of that gets based on things that I've already studied, but some of it I want to do more research or look up and verify that my kind of hypothesis is at least, if not 100% correct, it's at least supported by science in some regard of some study. So there's a little bit of the research element, and then the rest of it is like, gets into things like, a big thing is it usually starts out with a concept. Now, granted, there was one. The one that I did, I've done it twice now. I did it at the first Pony Fest online, and I drug you on camera for it. I don't know if you remember.
Oh gosh, that was a while ago. I don't remember the specifics, but I remember you doing that.
It was The End is the Beginning. That was one. That panel started with the name. I had the name. The end is the beginning, and
it's a very sage sounding sentence.
Like it's because it was like when I made that, it was right after BronyCon announced that it was going to be closing shop, and we knew the series was coming to an end at that point. Says when I first did that panel was, I believe, at TrotCon 2019.
Okay, so you had done it before the series,
yeah,
because I know the one you were talking about that you pulled me on was afterwards, and I think that was around the time that, going back through my journals, that we were watching back through the last season because I hadn't finished it yet. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, and that was very much the vibe at the time, and I was very much like, okay, what can I do to make a statement here about that the end doesn't just mean the end. And that was an odd one because it really I had to warn you. I was like, I literally pulled from our story of our friendship to make that panel. Which was interesting. But that's the thing though, that's what people respond to. Like, I've kind of half joked because part of this I think is kind of true, that sometimes keeping Friendship Magic is like therapy for myself. Because
it has been like some of the topics we've done and the ones I have planned are definitely that. I mean,
yeah, it's because like the most recent one that I did, the Midnight of Me, which was the new 2021, was literally completely birthed out of kind of a need to for self therapy. And that's what drove that one, was because I had a moment where something hit me and I got really depressed for a couple of days, and then I suddenly remembered that there was a pony episode that related to it. And I went, okay, now that I literally use pony as an example to teach lessons in panels. This has to go into a panel.
Because
how do I build off this?
Something.
Exactly. So, and it was funny because it was an episode I kind of slept on up until that point too. And that's funny how those things happen, is sometimes things you don't realize or you don't connect with at first, later something happens and makes you connect with it.
Is that what usually inspires your panels, of like a moment of like, at least your, I guess we can start with your Keeping Friendship Magic panels and go up from there, but like what inspires them? Is it from moments where you see something where it's like, hey, this is something, here's a lesson I've learned or something I've come across that other people should know about, it would be helpful, and then it kind of billows out from there?
It's a few things, because like I'm always thinking of ideas. My brain doesn't stop. It doesn't shut up. It's constantly thinking. And so as soon as I do one thing, I usually have an idea for something else. Doesn't mean it's actually going to ever come to fruition.
But do you ever have like, is it there are other times where you have like a moment of inspiration?
Oh,
or just
yeah.
like, because there's, you know, we do certain ones and not others. I know I've had times where it's just like I'm feeling a certain thing of like, I think this would be an interesting concept, or like this is something that I really love that I have a lot to talk about on, and I feel like I could make something good out of it, or like.
Yeah, there's definitely, because some of the things, sometimes too, there are things I want to talk about and I can't figure out the angle right away. Because like I know at some point we're gonna do a DuckTales panel. It's gonna happen.
I keep forgetting about that. We should get on that. I guess we're waiting.
And
I've
wanted to talk about DuckTales since.
Or maybe we get back on it to be prepared
since
for the end.
Since I got turned on to it, and I just couldn't figure out the angle, and now we have enough of an angle to make it happen. In fact, I think we have several different angles we could do, but sometimes it sits there. It's kind of it's a weird confluence of things, because like I think a lot of it is personal, though, especially with Keeping Friendship Magic. That one's the most personal, because it's always like either a lesson I learned or like a thing I've seen where I want to communicate out. Like the We're Not Flawless one that I did was very much a big one about me trying to remember to not beat myself up as much over everything.
Do a lot of your panels like that, or even all of them, have a mission statement like that, even if it's not necessarily the theme of the entire thing?
I mean, I guess you could say yeah, because I'm hoping to leave people with some kind of message at the end of it.
Like, it's the thing that forms the, like, it's the core of it. Like, I have of, like, it's usually, a lot of mine were, and mine aren't obviously, especially Keeping Friendship Magic, like, yours are a lot more, like, science-y research, where mine's just sort of, like, stuff research, because it was, like, I had, usually there's some sort of story moment or just a thing that inspires it. Of like a number of years ago now, I did a panel in Leica, the stop motion film company, and that was born out of like a story that their like company was closing down, or like people were getting laid off and stuff like that. And this is now years ago, and that inspired me to go like look into that company, because it's like owned by the son of the person who owns Nike, and it was like this crazy story. And then I kept digging and I learned more, and I'm like, this is a really interesting story. I want to share it with other people. Or I don't think I ever ended up doing it, because I was going to do it for ZenkaiCon last year, and then it got canceled, and then I kind of lost interest, which was good because I hadn't finished it in time. Of like noticing how crazy, of like seeing stuff in the news that we were getting, which we're now seeing the end results of. Like there's the Nintendo land at Universal, and that like Illuminations is working on a Mario movie, and just like trying to communicate how crazy that is. And I mean, the heart of the panel was more about like, here's some funny weird stuff the West did with Nintendo properties back in the 90s, and then Nintendo took their ball and never gave it back. And you know, that was what was like the core goal there. But the thing that sort of inspired it, that was the point that I'm like, I guess arguing, but I don't think that's the right word. Here's the point that I'm presenting, is that the situation we're now is crazy, that we're getting this at all after, you know, Nintendo doesn't forget. Nintendo is an elephant. Nintendo does not forget.
Yeah.
So, and trying to, you know, through comedy and just showing a bunch of goofy, you know, showing off, you know, Hotel Mario and all that fun stuff, of like, you know, being entertained by that, but then expressing that mission statement of, hey, this is kind of crazy. You should also think that too. Here's some exampes why.
Yeah.
So, okay. Sorry to tangent to myself for a moment.
It's okay.
But, like, would you say you have that, or no?
Yeah, like there's an intention. Definitely. There's always an intention in the main theme of it. Because no matter what, especially in the KFM panels, it's like I want people to walk away with something. granted, I mean, I guess I always want them to walk away with something, but a lot, some of the other ones, like a lot of the other, like the comedy stuff, is like, I want them to walk away having laughed or been entertained or enjoyed their time. So I still want them to walk away with something. It may not be some grand scientific revelation in those panels, but, as long as they had a good time, then I'm happy.
Yeah. And sometimes stuff like that can really help, make a difference to people or inspire them or something, and you never know when something you've done is the one for, that'll do that to somebody else, but
it's kind of like that thing of like as much as we kind of have that thing where we like hang our heads when everybody brings up Fuff anymore, of like, you know what? We did a panel, a word just hit the lexicon, everybody vibed with it, and people still like just love just like chants of Fuff in the chat rooms and stuff. And here it is, like it's been like 9 months or something like that since that started, and it still happens. And as much as I know myself and Thoth and we're like, okay, we get it, like at the end of the day, we still super appreciate the fact that it ever became a thing, because it's like people vibed off this and it made them happy, and there's merch and people are like all about it. And I'm like, you know what, if it's making them happy, then we did the good thing, even if all it did was taking me reading one mistyped word.
Sometimes that's it. You can't manufacture lightning. It'll appear when it desires to, and then it can't be bottled back up.
Well, that's the thing. It's like we can't try to replace it. You can't like try to make the new meme. It just has to happen.
Yeah, and you can't try to stop it. That will just cause it to get bigger.
Exactly.
Usually. So
yeah.
I believe we're running a little bit. We're almost up on our little hour because we try to keep things to that. What would you say is a goal of yours now that we are in 2021? Obviously, the future is still a little unsure with in-person cons, aren't in person, but just in general for of all what you're putting together, of specifically keeping Friendship Magic, of even just yourself as a human being. What is a goal that you have for 2021?
Wow.
I know, big one, right?
Because there's things I want to do, but it's hard. Some of it's hard to wrap around this year, because who knows if we're gonna have physical cons back? Who knows when I can feel safe being outside of my house?
Let's pretend the later half of the year we'll be able to go out. Let's just pretend for a moment.
We can go out, I mean, a big thing, like, because I've had my, like, we just had New Year's not that long ago, so like I have my little resolutions for myself to get more organized and to kind of like get more in shape, and those seem so generic, but they're real for me.
People keep doing them because they don't stick to them, but they're really good for you. So you keep trying.
But I always want to keep growing is a big thing. There's specific little things I want to do. Like, I'm hoping this year, if I can, the first 18 plus Keeping Friendship Magic will happen. Which is something I've wanted to do it for like 2 years now, and I've been nervous though, because I think when people see 18 plus on a schedule, they think like, oh my god, it's gonna be lewd and dirty, and I'm like, no, but we need to talk about adult topics, so it has to be 18 plus, but these need to be talked about.
It does happen. We've had friends that have done that where it wasn't like,
it's
not every 18 plus panel's freaking HBO,
Yeah, I want to get back.
It doesn't have to revel in the fact that it can put whatever it wants on.
Yeah, I want to do some more delving in. Obviously, I'll continue Pony. But one thing I think that really got cut off from me with the pandemic is I technically didn't do any non-Pony cons last year, because they weren't happening. They didn't happen at all. The two, I was booked for 2 anime conventions that had to close and didn't have online yet, because this was very early in the pandemic, before even Ponyfest, and online cons.
That is a whole other conversation. I'm sad is now being open in my brain now. Like, I wonder why that was, but I don't think we'll have to take that one off mic then, because I'm curious to talk about it.
So I want to keep doing some more of this other fandom stuff. I did a Yaoi panel years ago that Rose keeps wanting me to do again, because she said it's one of her favorite panels that I've ever done.
Would you try to do a furry convention? I don't know if you have any
Yes.
material that would specifically fit that. But...
Oh, I think I do.
Okay. Your material, you'd know it better than I would.
I honestly, I've wanted to. I've looked into going to Anthrocon before or whatever. So hey, if anybody's out there
Start
from
a
a
little
furry
small
convention,
there was one in Harrisburg, so maybe when the world
really?
is back, we can
yeah,
investigate.
no,
it might be a small one. I don't know.
Well, I feel like a lot of the themes of keeping friendship magic will work very well in transitioning into a furry convention.
It's about fandoms and community, which is
exactly
furries and fandoms and community.
Well, and that's been the thing of like, while I will always hold Pony in very high regard, and I love Pony, and it inspired me to make this and be who I am today. You know, I know that the messages are so much bigger than that, and I think that's the thing, is I want to keep branching it out, because there's so many other amazing series that have great friendship lessons and life lessons. You know, just in 2020 alone, we watched She-Ra and Owl House and you know, and Kipo and all these that had these great moments and story. Like, they were great shows, but they also had great messages that I know we can. And I think that's a big thing of like as animation in particular, but really a lot of pop culture is taking heed, and you're seeing more and more of these really strong series now with these strong messages in there, and it's like now is the time to kind of like, let's talk about this and talk about how do we take what's on the screen and make our real world a little better from it. So I guess that's kind of my big goal, is just keep growing it and bringing more in, and yeah, and maybe if I get lucky, TruckCon 2021 will happen. I really want that to happen. Spoiler: if you come to TruckCon 2021 in person and it happens, I might have news to share on stage.
What a tease! What a tease! Right as we're winding down this conversation. Up out of time. He was gonna say something, but clock's up. Can't fight Father Time. Just doesn't work. So thank you. Thank you, Ford, for that. I guess one of my goals in general that I've learned from last year into this year is that interviewing people is a lot of fun, and now I kind of want to do more of it. So hopefully we can do more of these types of things with other people in the future. I feel like that'd be really cool.
But totally that might be on game for that.
Who knows? So. I have been Kermit the Grog. This has been Forward Progress. Forward, where can they find you on the doobly-doos?
You can follow me on Twitter at KeepFriendMagic.
KeepFriendMagic.
You can, if you want to check out our Patreon, it's patreon.com/KFM.
See, he's getting better at it already, folks. You gotta pimp your Patreons.
And if you want to listen to the podcast, we're pretty much almost anywhere you listen to podcasts. But you can go to our hub at kfm.buzzsprout.com.
Fantastic. And you can find me online, and that's just the way I like it. So I guess you can find me riding his coattails in the places you can find stuff he's making. Sometimes I guest on your podcast. Sometimes we collectively do a Kermit's Pop Culture Talk Zone, where we talk about who knows what, which is mostly just it's a keeping friendship magic that's got less research and science in it.
Yeah.
And we just sort of go in directions, and they've been coming increasingly more just sort of therapeutic deep dives into our own brains. So we've got one that I've been dying to do, which we need to wait for the return of the lovely Nova Rose when we're all a little bit more sane to mind for, but which we all look forward to. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a friend, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye!